Hello, I'm Kads and welcome to today's video. So today we're going to be doing another installment of free-to-play champion showcase, this time highlighting a fairly recent fragment summon champion, Kro'khad the Throatripper. As always, the champions selected for these showcases are chosen by you guys, my lovely viewers, so be sure to check out my community tab page where there'll be a new poll after this video goes live asking you guys what you want to see in the next installment of free-to-play champion showcase. So let's dive right in. Kro'khad the Throatripper is the long-awaited hound that we were promised over a year ago when Packmaster Shy'Ek came out, and the synergy he has with hounds in the game. Obviously, the existing hounds in the game were relatively underwhelming, comparatively speaking, and so we weren't really that hyped about Packmaster way back in the day. But literally over a year later, they finally released this hound who is an absolute beast, especially when paired, of course, with Packmaster. Now, I will be showcasing them primarily together today because I do think that you get the most value from running them together, but I will also do a separate test where we can see them isolated and you'll see just how much worse, I guess, Kro'khad is without the pairing. So in this video, we're going to be going through his kit. We're going to be talking about the build that he's currently in on my account, and I'm going to be showing you a couple of areas where I use him on my account. So just as a refresher in terms of his abilities here on the A1, it's an AoE attack. This will deal single target damage to each target, meaning that it will bypass any passives that reduce damage taken from AoEs, i.e. like a Duchess passive, for example, or when it comes to the Hydra heads, their inherent passives to take less damage from AoE damage. This A1 will also ignore all reflect damage of buffs and effects, ally protection, as well as pain link. So he can bypass a lot of things that would otherwise reduce his damage or deal damage to himself or someone else in the case of pain link. When he's paired with Packmaster, this attack will deal double damage when counterattacking if Packmaster Shy'Ek is on the same team. Now, this obviously is great that you deal double damage, but you do have to keep in mind that counterattacks naturally do 25% less damage than a normal attack, just because that's just how they work. So in actuality, this ability will deal about 50% more damage than using it normally when counterattacking if Packmaster's on the same team. On the A2, we have another AoE attack, and this will place an extra hit on enemies under 2 or more debuffs, and this is great because it does account for the fact that he's placing 2 debuffs himself. He has a 100% chance when booked of placing Leech and Weaken, so if both of those do land, you'll get the extra hit no matter what, regardless of the presence of Packmaster Shy'Ek. However, if you do have Packmaster Shy'Ek on the same team, then these debuffs cannot be resisted, i.e. you don't need to build any accuracy on this champion. And then lastly, we have the A3, which is a single target attack. It will ignore 50% of the target's defense, as well as life barrier, poison cloud, i.e. things that are typically associated with Hydra clan boss, as well as effects that redirect attacks, damage, or debuffs to another target, i.e. the head of mischief cannot dodge this attack regardless of his redirection type ability. When Packmaster is on the same team, then this becomes a double hitter effectively when used. But his power level and synergy do not stop there. It gets even better here with the passive. It will increase his attack by 5% when killing an enemy or decapitating a Hydra head, stacking up to 25%. So as long as you take him into a longer battle, he's going to get more attack across the entirety of the battle. It will increase the champion's attack by 10% when killing an enemy, so double, and stacks up to 50% if Packmaster Shy'Ek's on the same team. So again, if you run them together, you get a bigger bang for your buck. However, you will still have a basis of the 25% boost in a team without Packmaster, which is still good. And then one of the biggest sources of damage, it will instantly activate Dominant Predator, which is the A3 against a Hydra head when an ally is devoured by the head if Packmaster Shy'Ek is on the same team. Of course, if he gets devoured, this won't activate, but if anyone else gets devoured, it will activate this ridiculously hard-hitting single or potentially double hitter depending upon your team composition, ignoring 50% defense, and it will ignore life barrier, poison cloud if those happen to be out, which could be kind of GG scenarios, especially when you get to the end or near the end of the fight. So yeah, this ability hits extremely hard, as we'll see in a little bit, and having that be automatic as soon as someone gets eaten basically means, unless he happens to double weak hit, which can happen of course on a force head, but most of the time you basically just instantly free whoever got consumed. It's pretty fun to see. Now let's take a look at the build here. I have my Kro'khad built in a 6-piece Merciless set. Now it's not like the highest quality Merciless set on my account, but it is enough for the primary purpose, which is Hydra on my account. Going through the individual gear pieces, we do have a banner on him, an attack banner, which has some speed and some attack. We have a crit damage amulet. This is part of the merciless set here with crit damage. Then got lucky on the ascension on the first roll, but resistance we don't really care about, but I put this on it because it's merciless and it happens to have a little bit of attack on the ring, of course, with some attack on it. We have attack percentage on the boots. We don't really care about his speed that much because, again, when you run him with Packmaster Shy'Ek, he's going to be counterattacking a lot, and so you don't necessarily have to worry about him taking his turns. He can just get a lot of damage by existing on the team. So attack with attack there. Not the best boots, but they kind of worked for his build. So a little bit of speed, a little bit of flat attack, lots of crit damage, and a little bit of crit rate, which helps him get to the crit cap. We have attack percentage on the chest, speed, crit rate, some accuracy, but that's irrelevant. More attack ascension. We have crit damage on the gloves, no speed here, but attack and crit rate. Again, not the best quality pieces, but it got the set bonus completed, which is most important. On the shield, we have crit damage with speed and some crit rate, some accuracy as well. On the helmet, speed and crit with some attack, and on the weapon, speed, crit, and some attack. So all of this culminates into total stats that are as follows: 38,000 on the HP, so relatively squishy, but as we'll see, he can easily keep himself alive and or he just gets revived. 9,000, over 9,300 on the attack, and that's of course because of a lot that we have double attack percentage on the chest and the boots, and both of them are ascended with attack percentage. Got lucky again on those rolls, and so he is stacked out with attack, and he also has a ridiculously high base attack of 1,700, so it is relatively easier to scale the attack as well, on top of the blessing and the relic we'll get to a little bit later. Defense, don't really care about that. Speed 189. Again, you don't have to necessarily build him fast, particularly if you're running him with Packmaster Shy'Ek. If you're running him on his own, he can still be serviceable. Again, the damage numbers you'll be seeing today, he won't be able to reproduce them just because he's not going to be as efficient on his own, but you'd probably want him to be a little bit on the faster side to cycle through his abilities because you're not getting the benefit of the counterattacks. Full crit rate 324 on the crit damage, and then we don't really care about the accuracy or resistance because I'm running him with Packmaster Shy'Ek. In terms of the relic on him, I do have one of my Erethi coronets, so he's getting a little bit of attack from that, a little bit of accuracy that doesn't really matter, but the main thing of course is that we're getting the damage increase that stacks up to 30% every time they place a debuff, and of course he has the 2 debuffs in his kit. For the gemstones, you get a little bit of defense ignore when he places if the target's under 2 or more debuffs, which they will be, 1 from his abilities or just in general from the team, and then he just takes a little bit less damage from bosses, so nothing crazy there. It's an epic relic with some epic and rare gemstones. Nature's Wrath is the blessing, basically the same thing as the relic. 5-star soul was acquired from the Packmaster's Path or whatever it was called, so I didn't have to go for Packmaster because I had him already from his fusion, so I went for the soul instead, and so that's why I get the that's why I have the 5-star. If you were back then, if you were in the situation where you didn't have Packmaster, then I definitely would have recommended you go for the Packmaster versus getting the soul, because I do think that's a bigger boost in damage overall, but I digress. But yeah, 5-star soul there for the extra damage that comes out of Nature's Wrath. And then for the masteries, pretty standard stuff here. Offense tree, ultimately coming down to War Mastery, but we're making over to Cycle of Violence to reduce the cooldown of skills for other areas of the game where I do happen to use them. Curse City, Faction Wars and whatnot. Basically everything that you can get that will increase his damage. So single out Heart of Glory, bring it down. Methodical, you definitely want that. He's going to be using his A1 a lot. And then the support tree, pretty much picking up a little bit of the accuracy stuff, a little bit of turn meter here from Arcane Celerity, Lore Steel for the extra stats. This does affect the Merciless set because it gives you some of the more basic stats that are amplified. So a little bit more attack, a little bit more crit damage, etc. And then of course, Master Hexer, extend the duration of, or potential to extend the duration of the Weaken and or Leech. So before we jump into a Hydra Clan boss battle, I do want to highlight just the little important bits about Packmaster Shy'Ek in terms of his synergy with Kro'khad here. So on the A1, it's a single target that places decreased defense, but this will bring in any beasts to join in on the ally attack, and they will use their default skills. So of course this means that Kro'khad, when he joins in, will be using his AoE on the A1, which is ridiculously strong. On the A2, it doesn't really benefit the Hound, but it does benefit Shy'Ek, that he basically protects the buff that he places on himself as long as he has a Hound on the team. And this ability here, same sort of similar thing, that the debuff he places cannot be resisted if he has a Hound on the team. So you don't necessarily have to worry about accuracy for these, or resistance for these two abilities, but you would have to worry about it for placing the Hex on the passive. And then the most important thing here is that whenever this champion is attacked, one, either because he has taunt on, or just because there's a lot of AoEs, specifically in Hydra Clan boss or bosses in general, the any beast will counterattack. So you get ally attack on the A1 and counterattack on the passive here. So lots of extra bonus attacks, which is again why you don't necessarily need a Kro'khad to be super fast when you combine them together. And then because it is relatively niche, I will highlight the build that I have on my Packmaster. I have him in a cursed set with retaliation. Now, retaliation is not there because of trying to get extra ally attacks. It doesn't work that way. If he counterattacks it, he just brings it himself. But the logic here is that with the retaliation plus the curse set, he has a chance to place hexes on his A1 whenever the 50% chance procs in the opposite to counterattack. Plus, as you'll see, the team that I run him on, there is no AoE decreased defense, so him counterattacking has a chance for him to just place decreased defense on whichever target, which will eventually come back around to Kro'khad hitting that target. So when it comes to Hydra Clan boss, this is the team that I run with Kro'khad on it. It is a really, really aggressive team, but I can get away with it just because of the builds on the champions. But we have Nekmothar in the lead spot. He's our primary Energizer Bunny, turn meter filled, increase speed, decrease speed, leech, as well as decrease attack. We have Ninja Mikage in the mix, so with that powerful / broken combination of lots of damage, we have Packmaster Shy'Ek as well as Kro'khad in the mix. And then to keep everyone alive and running, we have Rector Drath as our anti-torment champion with the perfect veil, as well as our healer and reviver for the squad. Now for the first bit, I do want to just go into the run. We're going to run it on full auto just to kind of see the interaction. This is of course the team with Packmaster and Kro'khad together. Obviously Mikage will help a little bit as well with ally attacks, even though when she A1 she's only going to bring in Ninja, but just in general she brings in everyone when she uses that ability there, so that is helpful. She's also our increased attack champion for the squad, so we're maximizing the damage potential from Ninja as well as Kro'khad. And so yeah, nice synergy there. And so the main thing we want to look out for is that if and when there are AoEs, we're going to see the counterattacks from Kro'khad, and we're going to see a significant amount of damage. We can see the A3 there basically one shot the hit of mischief from full HP, which is kind of ridiculous. This is only brutal clan boss, or brutal Hydra clan boss, so there is a little bit of a grain of salt with that, but nonetheless, even in this build, he can do a lot of damage, as we just saw, to a live head. Mind you, that was not a decapitated head. One thing to watch out for, of course, is, when you have a relatively unreliable perfect veil champion, that being Rector Drath, it can be quite annoying with the Head of Torment, because he will kind of constantly fear himself if he's not under veil because of all the ally attacks and counterattacks. We'll see if we can get one here. Maybe the Head of Torment might be able to trigger it. Head of Decay is a single target, and he's probably going to go for well, I don't know, someone, or he might die. Nope, we got a double weak hit. But yeah, when the Head of Torment takes his turn, he's going to do a big AoE, and we should be able to see one of the counterattacks. And then I think by now we've probably seen one of the ally attacks from what's his name, from Packmaster. So yeah, there's the attack, counterattack, lots of damage. So 300,000 on the live head, and lots and lots of damage. We'll get the ally attack here from Kro'khad, million damage on the decapitated head. So you guys kind of get the idea. He does a lot of damage, 2.4 there, using the A3 on the decapped head. Of course, the Merciless set can also it ignores defense, so it helps him maximize the damage of that A3. It ignores 50% by default, and then you add in the Merciless set, it's ignoring 85%. So you could argue that Helm Smasher, when it procs, it would produce, or it could produce a pure damage, fully ignoring target's defense, which is good, I guess, but I find that it's just more beneficial to just have him allow him to use War Master and hit a bunch of different heads, because given all the AoEs, and just kind of build up damage that way, especially as we kind of see that they are really, really efficient at killing the heads. So doing a little bit more damage to them, in my opinion, is not going to make a big difference, just because the heads are already dead. So hitting a bigger number on a decapped head when it's capped anyways is kind of pointless, in my opinion, but I digress. So I'll skip ahead a little bit here relative to you guys, and we'll try and catch just to see his interaction of the passive when he can free people. Of course, he's going to get eaten first, so it might take a bit, but for you guys, I guess it'll be in the span of a few seconds. All right, so nearly 200 million damage later, we can see that we're finally cycling back through, or at least another one of our champions is going to be consumed. consumed Lady Mikage in a couple of Hydra turns here. So once we get to see that in action, we'll be able to, I guess, kind of take stock of, or see the power level of that passive interaction there, and just see it basically automatically free a champion, which is pretty fun to watch. So obviously this is, again, a very greedy team and a very high damage output team. So we're going to do a lot of damage, as we'll see a little bit later when we just auto battle the run. But just in general, this team is going to do a lot of damage, meaning that they're going to be regularly killing the heads more or less after they spawn, after the Serpent's Will buff kind of goes away. So they're not going to get too many turns aside from them, you know, just getting at least the guaranteed one turn that they're going to have because of Serpent's Will. So one turn away. Let's see which head is the lucky one that gets to consume Mikage, and then we'll get to see the passive in action here. I'm thinking it's the Head of Decay based on the turn meters there. Oh, no, never mind. It's going to be the Head of Blight. Never mind. Misspoke there. But yeah, at this point, I think Kro'khad's kind of like maxed out his damage from the relic, as well as his passive, and so you can see there, or you can see there that he was doing, you know, what 2 million per hit now with the A3 on the decapitated heads. It may not even have had whatchamacallit on it, but yeah, there you go. There's the instant activation of that A3, and literally instantly freed Mikage. You don't have to worry about it. We don't have to think about freeing her. Again, this is brutal clan boss, so that, you know, you're going to be seeing relatively higher damage numbers compared to running this on Nightmare. But pretty much, as long as he's not the one consumed, and you don't, you know, double weak hit on a force head, whoever gets eaten is going to be instantly broken free when you have him on the team with Packmaster. So super solid combination there. So now, as an example, let's go ahead and quick battle this on Brutal, just to do an A/B testing comparing the team with the Packmaster and the Kro'khad to a team without it. And for me, the 1-to-1 swap for Packmaster Shy'Ek is going to be a champion. We're just going to sacrifice the Hex on this particular comp, because I'm not going to rework a bunch of people's gear, but we're just going to throw in Ugo in the mix so that we maintain the block buffs for the squad there. So you can see there's 700 million damage, nearly 1 billion damage, and believe it or not, despite the 6-star Crushing Rend on Ninja plus Mikage boosting his damage overall, Kro'khad was still able to outdamage him by nearly 60 million damage, which honestly shocked me the first time I ran this team, because I really thought that Ninja with the 6-star Rend was going to win, but also highlights the fact that for all the people out there that don't necessarily have Ninja on their account, you missed it when he first came out, you missed it when he came back, and you happen to have Kro'khad and Packmaster, they can basically do, you know, similar, if not better amounts of damage than that combination. Obviously, I'm running them here together, so I get the double benefit there. But if you don't have Ninja, you know, and despite having Mikage, you can still run Kro'khad Packmaster in a Hydra team, and you're going to get comparable damage to what a Ninja is capable of doing, which I think is really awesome for a fragment summon champion, not even a, you know, hybrid style fusion, one of the easier styles. So it's not a perfect 1-to-1 swap. I don't think most champions of Hydra are 100% interchangeable, maybe except a couple of them, but nonetheless, we've dropped out the Packmaster, and now we just have Kro'khad on his poor lonesome with Ugo in the mix. So let's go ahead and quick battle that. Remember, for reference, the Packmaster version of the team did 700 something million, Ninja did about 300 million, and then Kro'khad did about 360 million. So in this case, Kro'khad is going to do a lot less damage, and so Ninja roughly about the same, a little bit less, 283 relative to 300, but Kro'khad basically did what, half damage more or less. And this just goes to show you that you can technically run Kro'khad by himself. He is still going to do, you know, a couple 100 million damage depending upon the team that he's on, but he's going to do a lot less, about half the damage, if you don't happen to have Packmaster on the same team. So heavily advised to run them together, or potentially consider a different DPS for your Hydra teams who can do potentially a similar amount of raw damage but has some synergy with some other type of champion, or just has a bit more damage overall without having to depend on some sort of companion. Switching gears a bit here, let's hop into Faction Wars, which is the other area primarily that I use my Kro'khad. And yeah, of course, we're going to be running the tandem together once again. It is the Orcs faction crypt. After all, they are both Orcs. Now, you will notice that I've not made it very far in hard mode Faction Wars for the Orcs. Stage 14 has proven relatively, or extremely, I should say, difficult, just because as much as I like Tagore as a champion, he is not tanky enough to survive the minions from the boss there, the second boss, and so he just gets absolutely destroyed, unfortunately. And if he dies, then he can't revive and everyone else is dead. So for now, I'm hard stuck on the Orcs faction crypt, but nonetheless, I typically run this on auto on stage 13. So this team, Packmaster Shy'Ek, as well as Kro'khad. We got Iron Brago in the mix, Angar as well for the provoke, and then Tagore to keep the team running. I know a lot of people are definitely hyped on Tagore, and I am a like mild fan, but not a huge fan. I don't generally like the reviver types who can waste the revive when no one's dead, because then when people do die, you know, a turn later and you've wasted it, then it's not available and you can't revive them, and I find that really annoying. So I'm not a huge fan, but nonetheless he does the job. So the point of this is just to show you, you know, outside of the Hydra context, that Kro'khad can still do a lot of damage in wave content as well, and we can definitely still get the synergy of the ally attacks joining in here. So the way this team is set up, Angar is the primary provoker for wave 1, Iron Brago is the primary provoker for wave 2, and then we just slowly but surely kind of AoE them down with Kro'khad, either with the ally attacks or with the counterattacks if he happens to get lucky there. But looks like this is going to be a couple ally attacks, unless we weak hit, unfortunate. But yeah, eventually we'll be able to get her down. Oh, she got a turn where you got frozen. It's sad. So this is going to be a little bit slower of a run. We just happen to weak hit her at the wrong time, I guess. A little bit unfortunate there. But yeah, working our way through, and then when we come to the last wave, this is a lot squishier than that previous one. So by the time we get to Kro'khad's turn, which should be shortly here, then we can basically just, you know, kill them. Oh, never mind, he didn't have the AoE. Awkward. It's fine, but we're still going to get it done. But yeah, this is going to be a little bit slower. I guess we'll get to see the A1 in action here, where he's not going to take damage from the reflect damage whenever he gets his turn, or when Packmaster gets their turn. Yeah, it doesn't really matter, but yeah, you can see there, normally that would have probably killed him with the reflect damage on 2 enemy combatants, but because his A1 ignores that, then you don't have to worry about that aspect of you know, annoying aspect, I should say, of wave content, which can be pretty tedious. But yeah, 90 seconds there, a little bit slower, a little bit of bad RNG, but you get the idea. He can work here in PvE content or wave content as well. Same thing when it comes to like Centranos. I use him there whenever applicable, because he just does a lot of damage, even in the current build, even without Packmaster Shy'Ek. Now, looking at the grand scheme of the game in terms of other areas that you can use him, I don't think he's really made for dungeon content, despite saying he's good for wave content, but he's more good for like the niche wave content where you're restricted. But dungeons, I just don't think he's that type of champion. He can do a lot of damage. He'd probably be fun to use, and duoing Dragon or something with Packmaster, keeping himself alive with Leech and whatnot. But I just don't think that, that'd be more for fun and less like practical. He's not really built for any particular boss in the game. We showed him off in Faction Wars. Arena, I'm not going to cover that here, but there are some teams that run a really slow Kro'khad, 2-turn Stone Skin or Stone Skin and Savage, and you just have a Packmaster sitting there with the taunt, I guess a relatively fast Packmaster sitting there under taunt. You're forced to attack him, and every time you do, you get counterattacked by the Kro'khad, and he can definitely wipe your entire team with the counterattacks just because he hits so damn hard. So keep an eye out for that if you see that on defenses, or you can put that in as your defense as well. So he does technically have some arena potential if you want to build him for that. It's more of a meme, like kind of like a Hefrak and a food champion as well, that kind of concept of a team where if people just don't know what's going on, they can murder themselves unknowingly. But I don't think that's his primary use case, and that is also predicated on you having the combination of him plus Packmaster. For the clan bosses, of course, he's not really that great for Demon Lord. He can do a lot of damage, but that's just not, there are a lot of options that you're better off running in, the current meta of unkillable teams and or Wixable teams. And then for Chimera, I want to give like an honorable mention to this, because he is kind of unique in that, relative, or I guess against like the Ram form, his A1, you can just kind of turn off the other 2 abilities and he can just spam his A1, and then he won't have that damage reflected to him. Again, you do need the combination of him plus Packmaster to kind of make that more efficient as far as a full Chimera team. But it is kind of fun to just see him, he's one of the only champion in the game at the moment who can ignore that damage reflection, so he can just continuously spam his A1, and every single counterattack as well, or ally attack, is not going to have him take damage. So he's one of the few champions who, without block damage or unkillable, can actually deal damage on the Ram form and Chimera, but he's a little bit weaker when it comes to some of the other forms. He's really squishy, of course, and you might run into some affinity issues if there's a couple of force stuff going on in the rotations. But again, if you're balling on a budget for a Chimera team and you have both of the champions, he can definitely work as your primary DPS for certain compositions, especially if you're kind of just progressing through. Doom Tower, again, secret rooms, if he happens to fit the restrictions, he can definitely help you there. He's not the best for the waves, but you technically could run him in a stun set if you wanted to, because he doesn't have an AoE on the A1, but I think you'd be missing out on the bigger potential of his kit in a build like that. Curse City, you can run him in that, of course, like I talked about, for restrictive wave content. He's definitely a good solid DPS. And then Siege, same thing. If you wanted to build an all orc defense going on in Siege, you could run them together in the stone skin type meme strategy, and you'll probably take people by surprise, or they just might struggle to deal with the fact that Packmaster has taunt and Kro'khad will keep counterattacking and when they're forced to attack him. So there you have it. That's going to do it for the free-to-play champion showcase for Kro'khad the Throatripper. Hopefully you found this exciting, and if you're sitting on Kro'khad in the vault, you should definitely bring him out and make use of him, specifically in Hydra and other areas, but he can do a lot of damage when you set him up correctly. As I mentioned at the beginning, stay tuned to my community tab page after this video goes live to participate in the next poll for the champion that will be selected for the next free-to-play champion showcase. That said, I will not be including Donatello or Leo on that list because I do plan to do them regardless, probably in some combination video showing them off together, because they're the only two turtles that I really plan on using. But that's going to take a couple more weeks, because even though they are now 6-starred, I do have to, I guess, spoiler alert on the builds there, but it's going to take me a couple of weeks to fully ascend them, fully book them and whatnot. I have to wait for the next CVC, so it's just going to be a bit, but that is on the docket as far as the series is concerned. Let me know in the comment section down below how you have your Kro'khad built. Do you have stats that are close to mine? Do you have his 5-star soul? Did you get it from the Hero's Path? Do you have him plus Packmaster? Do you have him just by himself? Or do you have the same thing as me, him plus Packmaster plus the 5-star soul, which is a very, very strong combination, as we saw today. As always, if you did enjoy the video, then be sure to hit that like button down below. Really does help out the channel, and feel free to hit the subscribe button down below as well, if and only if you're enjoying the content overall on this channel, for more content just like this one in the future. Thanks for watching, and have a good one.